How do we beat Nebraska? What players need to step up? And is it true that I know nothing? Let's go. Today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you for making this your first listen. Really do appreciate it for all the everydayers out there who are with us every single day. Y'all are amazing. This community is incredible. Thank you so much. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com, Locked On College. Use the code Locked On College for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Let's get into it. Nebraska coming up. This is a huge game for so many obvious reasons. First of all, you have the domination of Nebraska. It's just fun to continue to hold that over their heads. It's been nine straight. Nine straight in Madison, I think it is. It's been a dominating series for Wisconsin, and frankly, a lot of games haven't been that close. You also have bowl eligibility on the line for both programs. The next win for either one gets them bowl eligible. Listen, we've talked about this a lot. I know there are those that say it doesn't matter. This season stinks. I don't care about a bowl. It's going to be a useless bowl. You have to get to a bowl game this year because you need the practices. That's it. It's not about winning a meaningless quote-unquote bowl, although that's still fun. That's the other part of it, too. We're Badger fans. It's nice to have another game, right? It's nice to have another game to talk about, to see players in. That bowl game traditionally, especially you see some younger players. You see some potential springboards into next season. Listen, we all get it. We all know what happens in the dead season of sports. The gap between football games is very long. It's excruciating. You want a bowl game. You want a bowl game for the practices. You want a bowl game so you have another game to watch. So, yes, winner gets a bowl game. There's obviously a trophy on the line. The trophy's kind of engineered. The Freedom Trophy, it's kind of whatever. Let's talk a little Nebraska. Let's talk a little bit about this game, some keys to the game, some things that I noticed looking at the stats. Let's start right here with the quarterbacks. So Nebraska, we don't really know who's starting, right? They have kind of a three-headed quarterback circle going on. Henrik Heiberg, the starter, who's been the starter for a while. He's the rushing threat. He's actually 12th in the Big Ten in rushing, which is really impressive. He sprained his ankle last week. And even if he plays, I want to talk about that more, but even if he plays as a runner, how big does that take away the best element of his game, right? Not having one of your wheels fully spinning. That's a big deal. So then you have Jeff Sims or Chuba Purdy, Brock Purdy's younger brother. Both of them are kind of not. I mean, Jeff Sims is a turnover machine. He's got 6 picks this year. Purdy is a pretty good athlete, but he's a little smaller. He's also been banged up in the past. This year, he has 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. No matter what happens, the Nebraska quarterbacks this year have not been great at protecting the ball, and they're all kind of dinged up. This is, again, a game where Wisconsin's defense is not going to be facing, like they haven't for much of the year, a really good quarterback. So that's something to keep your eye on. Nebraska's rush defense is elite this year, 4th in the country, nationally, 2.69 yards per attempt. They've been really, really good, and they are able to use that to force teams into tough situations, tough third downs. Wisconsin has struggled in those situations all year. What does that all mean? Expect probably another low-scoring game. Expect another kind of ugly Big Ten West game. Both offenses are going to struggle. Nebraska's quarterbacks have been pretty bad. Their running game has been inconsistent, but their defense is really good. Is Wisconsin going to try to establish the run, or are you going to see another game where we've kind of talked about it, the run-pass balance feels off, right? Maybe there's 12, 13 runs and Tanner Mordecai throws it 40 times. I think you're probably going to see something like that again where the balance feels a little off, but that's partially because they're going to struggle running the ball against Nebraska. They very likely will because we've seen it all year. Wisconsin has struggled establishing that running game, and Nebraska has one of the best rushing defenses they're going to see the entire season. The quarterback run play. So this is one coming up to this game. I circled Henrik Heiberg and said their quarterback's going to give us issues because we struggle defensively. Wisconsin struggles defending a mobile quarterback. Harburg is 12th in the Big Ten in rushing yards as a quarterback. He's really hurt teams this year. But if he's dinged up, that's a huge part of what Nebraska wants to do that you maybe take out of their back pocket. It's going to be interesting to see how they play that. Matt Rule was talking about this quarterback situation this week. He mentioned Harburg is going to play, but he's probably going to be limited. They're keeping it kind of under wraps. Nebraska is obviously, they didn't want to tip Wisconsin off, so we are able to kind of develop a game plan. But nothing's good. None of it's good for Nebraska is my point. There's nothing good there. They're either going to have turnover-prone Jeff Sims, Purdy, or an injured Harburg. Nothing good there. Here's one. I get this question. I've got this question probably 3, 4, 5 times this week already. And people are like, why are we favored? Oh my gosh, what is Vegas seeing? We should not be favored. You got to also understand that Nebraska kind of stinks too, right? When we continue, because we get so focused on us, when you start looking at the other teams in the Big Ten, Nebraska's coming off back-to-back losses. They scored 10 points against Maryland. Then they got beat by Michigan State the week before. Michigan State has 3 wins this year. So it's not so much we're favored because anybody feels really good about the Badgers. We're at home. We've owned Nebraska, and Nebraska also kind of stinks. So for everybody out there wondering, how in the world could Wisconsin be favored again? Well, it's kind of because we're playing Nebraska. And just take that into account. A bright spot for Nebraska, this is something to watch and highlight, because if you were to lay out what are the 3 or 4 biggest struggles of this Badger team this year altogether, I think you'd probably talk about the offensive line. I think you'd probably talk about quarterback passing game inconsistencies, probably discipline, and you would talk about rush defense, right? The Badgers' rush defense has struggled at times, again, with mobile quarterbacks, but they've really struggled at times with tackling, with controlling the line of scrimmage. We've seen it in multiple games, even against the Northwestern that couldn't run the ball. Northwestern gashed us at times, especially in the first half, not in the second half. But that's defense has struggled with it. Nebraska, Emmett Johnson, running back, he's really turned it on for the Cornhuskers of late. Last 4 games, averaging 5.2 yards per carry. I know Nebraska beat writers listening to them think he might have a 100-yard game in his back pocket this week. So keep an eye on Emmett Johnson. He's really been one of the resurgent people in Nebraska's offense. At running back, again, that's something Wisconsin has struggled defending. But here's the big number. Here's why I think Wisconsin wins. I'm going to get to my prediction in a second. Nebraska is dead last in the Big Ten in turnover margin by far. They're minus 14 in turnover margin. That is an insane number. That's far and away the worst number in the Big Ten. Second place, I think, is minus 6. So they are worst in the Big Ten in turnover margin by almost 10 turnovers. And going on the road, again, we're at the point in the season where we are who we are. They are who they are. The Leopards don't change their spots, et cetera, et cetera. They are a turnover-prone team. There's always elements of luck in fumbles, fumble recoveries. But if you've turned it over 14 times and the season's not even over, you are a turnover-prone team. And if you're not a very good team, you have a struggling offense, you're going on the road, and you turn the ball over a ton, you're likely going to lose the game. So I'm going to take Wisconsin here. I don't feel great about it because we don't know we know who Wisconsin is too. Discipline issues, drop passes, special team issues, offensive inconsistencies. Like, none of that's changing either. Just like Nebraska is not going to suddenly become a team that values the football, all of Wisconsin's foibles are there as well. But I'm going to take Wisconsin to win. I'm going to take an ugly game, like a 16-14 game, 16. I'm going to say 16-13, Wisconsin. So not covering, but winning the game, taking the under. I think it's going to be ugly. I don't think it's going to be pretty. But for everyone losing their mind about why Wisconsin is favored over Nebraska, it's because Nebraska is not very good. So remember that heading into this weekend. They're not very good, and their starting quarterback is hurt. So I'm going to take like a 16-13, 16-10 type Wisconsin win, and hopefully we get back on the right track here. All right, we're going to take a quick break for friends of the show. Coming up next, we're going to talk about which Badger players need to step up this weekend and get into some of your comments. That's next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? It is the fastest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, fastest growing for a reason. Because people got sick of the traditional model of daily fantasy. They got sick of having to compete with the thousands of other people and all their data streams and their nerdatoriums. This is not that. It's just you against the data. You pick between 2 and 6 players over under on statistical categories. And if you win, the money rolls in. Cha-ching, cha-ching. It's fast, quick, easy to use. PrizePicks is awesome. It's fun. You log in and the graphical interface is very easy to pick up. I'm in and out 60 seconds, a minute and a half, whatever it is. I have my players. I clickety-clack. I pick. and I'm good to go. PrizePicks is the fastest and easiest way to do daily fantasy. It's why I'm using PrizePicks. And now there's a great offer. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's talk some Badgers that need to step up here, because I have two that immediately stepped to mind. I'm curious. Let me know in the comments, and we're going to get into your comments and thoughts here in a second. I'm very curious who needs to step up this week, right? There's plenty of people you could list, but I think you have to start with Tanner Mordecai. You have to start. So Tanner Mordecai went out and really questioned this team to some degree. Players need to step up. We need to, and if you're the starting quarterback and you're kind of calling out your team a little bit, deserved, by the way. I'm not saying that's not deserved. I like seeing it. I talked about it. Get the bullhorn. Ted Roosevelt said the perk of being a president is you get to sit on the bully pulpit, right? I think that was Theodore Roosevelt. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the bigger point is, as a quarterback, you can sit on the bully pulpit as well, and you can shout out some thoughts. You're a team leader. You're a captain. This is your role. Call people out. But then you better show up. Right, because Tanner Mordecai this year has not been the Tanner Mordecai we had hoped to see. Not for all of his reasons, not all on him. Receivers have dropped balls, the offensive line's had issues. There's a lot going on here that Tanner Mordecai by himself cannot fix, because he's not Tom Brady, he's not Peyton Manning. Nobody's those guys, right? But we need a good Tanner Mordecai game. If you're going to step up and say X, Y, and Z, you got to play good this week. You can't have another game where you have no touchdowns and a lost fumble, right? Where you're 0-1 on that ratio. You need to throw for a couple touchdowns. You need to not turn the ball over. You need to move the ball consistently. When you get to the red zone, the offense has to score. You are the orchestrator. You are the conductor of that train, Tanner Mordecai. It's got to be better. So he's got to step up. The other one I'm going to say is Hunter Wohler. Not that he hasn't all year, again, but he put the team on blast to a certain degree. Players need to step up. Who's sick of this? This is not what I'm here for. Well, you're facing a team who's had more turnovers, more picks than anybody in the Big Ten. That's one thing that if you look at Tanner Mordecai this year, there's several words that come to mind. Consistent, great tackler, stabilizer, physical. But one thing that isn't necessarily come to mind is a turnover, a guy who's forcing turnovers. This is a team playing Nebraska that has more turnovers than anybody. We need Hunter Wohler to force a turnover or two. We need that best player on the defense, that guy who has consistently been there and then just kind of put his teammates on blast. I want to see him come out with his hair on fire, force a turnover, get a pick, because this is the team to do it against. They will give you the ball. You just got to go get it. And the last one is that I put on here. Well, I got two more. This is kind of a collective one, the front seven. This is a team, again, we talked about it. Nebraska's coming in. Quarterback issues. Quarterbacks are banged up. They haven't been able to throw the ball really anyway. Their quarterbacks on the season have 8 touchdowns and 14 picks. Think about that ratio. They're about to maybe become bowl eligible, and their quarterbacks have thrown for 8 touchdowns with 14 interceptions. Now, granted, most of that damage is Jeff Sims, but that's terrible. So this is a front seven game. They're going to want to run. Purdy can scramble some. Obviously, Harburg, if he's in there, is going to run. They've had success in the last 4 weeks running the ball more consistently. They're going to want to run the ball. You got to stop the run. You got to be gap sounds. You got to be physical. You got to get off blocks. You got to stop the run this weekend. So that's a big one. And the next one is Bryson Green. You got to continue to stack good performances. And we saw it for a couple weeks, and then we kind of took a bit of a step back. Like, we need Bryson Green, to be that physical outside number one presence where Pauling can play in the slot and then Green can make some plays. We've seen it in spurts this year, especially over the last half of the season. We've seen it in spurts. We need to continue to see more of that from Bryson Green. So those are my Badgers that need to step up. It's got to be Mordecai. It's got to be Wohler, front seven, Bryson Green. I think we win this weekend, but I thought we'd beat Northwestern. I thought we'd beat Indiana. So at this point, it might just be the fan in me speaking, because there's no real reason to predict a Wisconsin win. There's not. But on the flip side, there's no real reason to expect Nebraska to win either. So somebody's going to win. And typically it's going to be the guy who doesn't turn the ball over more. That's why I think Wisconsin wins, because of that turnover issue that Nebraska consistently has. All right, let's get into some of your comments. I wrote a bunch down, or not wrote a bunch down. I copied a bunch down. I'm not transcribing this stuff. This was from Arum. Wouldn't be surprised to see us finish 5-7 this year. I'm giving Fickell one down year as a benefit of the doubt. I think it's a fair perspective. I would be very disappointed if we finish 5-7. If we finish off this season with 4 straight losses to Nebraska, Indiana, Northwestern, and Minnesota, boy, oh boy, that would be disappointing to me. But yeah, no matter what, the record's not going to be that different than 5-7. I think we go 1-1 down the stretch. No, I think we go 2-0 because I just picked us to beat Nebraska, and I have to pick us to beat Minnesota. So, thank you for the comment, man. This one I thought was interesting. Now, Timothy P wrote a much longer comment that was really insightful, but he said this part I wanted to put up there. He said the tight ends and Longo's offense at UNC accounted for roughly 23% of the passing game. This year, it's 8%. That's a drastic drop-off in production, and it doesn't even factor in run blocking. This is a great point from Timothy Palm. Thank you, by the way, for listening to the show and writing in. The tight end, Longo traditionally has really used his tight ends, and you look at the roster this year, the tight end talent just isn't there. And Tucker Ashcraft is a true freshman. Like, how much can you really expect from him? JT Seagreaves is a redshirt freshman who played multiple sports in high school. Riley Nowakowski is a converted fullback. You had injuries to, Cam Large. Some of these are being away from the program. They've lost players they were counting on. Clay Cundiff, obviously, before the season. Hayden Rucci is really just kind of more of a blocking guy. So there's not talent. There's not as much talent there as Longo's going to want. And you look at next year's class, Grant Steck coming in, maybe another year of Tucker Ashcraft developing, of JT Seagreaves developing, potentially Robert Booker coming back. Listen, there's smoke floating around in the stratosphere. So that's a possibility. But I think it's a great point. The tight ends this year, Longo's going to traditionally want to use that position group more, and he hasn't been able to. There's been too many injuries and too much inexperience. Dimitri says you cannot lose a locker room when you never had them. The good news in college, these kids are leaving no matter what. I think Fickell should get 4 years. Dimitri went on to say if at 4 years is a struggle, year 5, he'll be on the hot seat. I don't think he'll get that long. Wow, man. You know what? With his pedigree, that's a great question, Dimitri. I'm sorry, you didn't phrase it as a question, but you said he should get 4 years. If he continues to struggle, I think year 4 will be his hot seat year, and he won't get a year 5. I think he will, barring like cataclysmic stuff. I think he'll get 4 years almost guaranteed. I really do. I know Coach Anderson said 3-ish if it doesn't get better. I think he gets 4, and then he doesn't get a 5th if it doesn't get better. I think that would be the time frame I'm thinking of. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then I want to come back with Curtis Playmaker had an interesting point with Tanner Mordecai, offseason quarterback portal. Do we need a veteran quarterback in the portal this offseason? I'm going to get into that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our game changer of the week, which I've talked about it. It's John Blackwell Jr., athletic, big, fast. There is a reason that dude is playing as a true freshman. And just like the game changer of the week, Athletic Brewing has changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beer taste good. It's as simple as that. Like, sometimes we don't need to overcomplicate it. You want sometimes non-alcoholic beer because you like the social aspect of it. You like the taste, and you don't want a hangover. You don't want all those side effects. Athletic Brewing fixed that. They make great tasting, award-winning brews, non-alcoholic beers, and over 50 styles of craft IPAs, golden sours, and they're consistently and constantly releasing limited edition experimental styles to add to their variety, fit for all times. I've talked about it. Do it while you're making a boat in the garage, or while you're playing Parcheesi, or while you're playing with your kids, or riding on the lawnmower, whatever it is. You can use Athletic Brewing because it's fit for all times. No hangovers ever. That's one of the reasons I love it. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off athleticbrewing.com. Near beer exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing, fit for all times. All right, let's keep going here. I do want to talk about if you have a chance and want to check out our subtext, I have a lot of really fun one-on-one conversations with people. I'm able to text back and forth. Coach Anderson's going to start doing some exclusive content on there. It's a way to support the show. It's a way to have more of a one-on-one conversation with me. And it's a way where you get some snippets that I don't really feel comfortable releasing in other areas, like some recruiting snippets, some behind the scenes stuff. So the subtext is here. My link is in my Twitter bio. There's a free trial, and after that, it's $5 a month. So, but it's also no pressure. Like if you don't want it, that's totally cool too. Nothing changes on this show. So I do want to put it out there. If you're interested, check it out. If not, absolutely no worries. All right, let's talk through some of these comments. Curtis had Playmaker had a really good one here, and I mentioned in the past if Tanner Mordecai's leaving. If Locke doesn't step up this season or take that opportunity that was presented to him, you have to go into the portal and get a veteran quarterback. I still believe that. Curtis disagrees. Here's what he said. To be honest, I'm vehemently opposed to getting a transfer quarterback. Locke shows he understands and has the potential to run the offense at a high level. He simply made some freshman mistakes. It reminds me of Cone his first season. With an entire offseason and another year of study, he can make a huge leap. And there's more to this comment, so I don't want to cut it off there. As always, Playmaker has really good insight. I just disagree. Here's the thing. Like, I don't think you can put yourself in a position. So I don't necessarily disagree with the first part of what Playmaker is saying here. I did like some of what I saw from Braden Locke. I thought he did show an understanding and a potential to run the offense. But he also showed inaccuracies, right? He was too inaccurate with the football. He had ball security issues. Will some of that go away? Absolutely. Is it fair to judge him on 4 games? Absolutely not. But you can't go in my opinion, you can't go into the offseason with a quarterback room that is Braden Locke, Nabry Mettoyer, Cole LaCrue, and Miles Burkett. Never played, played 4 games and didn't take the bull by the horns. I mean, listen, I'm going to have Curtis on the show again because I like getting Curtis on whenever I can. So him and I will definitely chop this up more. But I think you have to get a quarterback in the portal because why not? I guess for 2 things. The first one's why not, right? What's the downside? You get more talent in the room until you find the answer. But other than that, the main reason is you just don't have enough experience in the room. You have no proven option. So I think you go out and find somebody and you see what happens. You make a competition, best quarterback wins, and worst case, you have a veteran there to maybe at least handhold the offense forward. Let's see. Big Apple Bucky said, Fickell and his staff also promised to get better as the season progressed. They've absolutely missed on that. This team has clearly regressed. I don't think they've gotten better. I wonder, I was thinking about this. I wonder how much they've regressed and how much we just, I'll speak for myself. Like I try to own my receipts. I wonder how much I overlooked some of the early season struggles. Like you remember, it wasn't exactly clean against Buffalo and Georgia Southern. They didn't exactly look great against a Washington State team. You know, right? Did they regress from that point to now, or did we just kind of overlook some struggles against what should have been relatively easy non-conference opponents? Obviously, Ohio State, they look pretty good, but I don't know. They certainly haven't gotten better, though. They have absolutely not gotten better this year as the season went on. This is Hot Dangerous. He said, beware the curse of saying this is rock bottom. Usually that means your bottom's about to get rocked harder. Yeah, that's a fair point. I need to stop saying that. That's like the old cliche in a movie, right, where the protagonist and his group is walking through the creepy museum, and they have flashlights, and they're like, oh, could this day get any worse? And then the flashlight battery starts to flicker and the monsters move in, right? Yeah, I will stop saying that this is rock bottom because you never know. That's a great point. Forrest Aguirre says, I wonder how much of a difference it might have made if Isaac Greno stuck around. Probably not a big one. And people who watch this show, Forrest, you know this. If you watch this show, if you're an everydayer, you know I'm the biggest Isaac Greno guy. I think it helps. It absolutely helps because it's enough. Instead of when Braylon and Ches go down, it becomes Jackson Aker and Cade Yakimelli. Isaac Greno would be ahead of both of them, right? Isaac Greno would have helped this offense. Maybe in one of your one-score losses, maybe in an Iowa game, he helps make a difference. It's certainly possible that he makes a difference in a game because he breaks a 70-yard play, which he can do because he has crazy speed, right? So maybe in a game he tips it, but overall, he's not really helping your passing game. He's not helping your offensive line. He's not helping your defense. He's not helping the fact that we're losing the punting battle. So maybe we have one more win. because maybe he breaks a big play in a big moment and that flips a game. That's totally possible, but I think it's about it. This is from Rabbit. He said, "You guys said Luke Fickell was going to be a good thing. You know nothing. Wisconsin should have kept Jim Leonard." Well, it's true. I may know nothing. I don't know. I do think Luke Fickell's a good thing, right? Like, should we have kept Jim Leonard? I was hopeful they were going to keep him as a DC. That would have been. It's no Jim Leonard shade. There's nobody outside of Tom Oates and a few other fans who wanted Jim Leonard over Luke Fickell. That's it. From a national perspective, what head coaching jobs were offered to Jim Leonard? It's not fair to Jim to say he should be offered the same level of jobs as Luke Fickell. I'm just trying to say from a big picture standpoint, Luke Fickell was the right hire. He just was. And it stinks that we lost Leonard. I wasn't happy about it. Like, I did a whole show about, like, thank you, Jim Leonard. But it is what it is. They made the right decision, in my opinion. I continue to believe that. There's also no guarantee. It's always easy to play revisionist history. There's no guarantee. What is this team this year with Jim Leonard? Like, who are the difference makers going to be defensively with Jim Leonard as the head coach, right? Like, that's the problem. It's not – there's a lack of playmakers. Was Jim Leonard going to do more in the transfer portal than Luke Fickell and his crew did? Probably not, right? So it would be the same core group of players. And maybe they'd beat Northwestern Indiana, but maybe they'd lose to Ohio State by 40. I don't know. I think it's difficult. This is from Ryan, another Ryan on the show. We got so many Ryans. There might be so many transfers before the bowl game. There is going to be a lot of attrition on this roster. I've talked about it. And I think it's needed. I think the change is needed, right? There are players, and honestly, it's probably win-win for some players too. I think there's some players who feel like they haven't got a fair shake, who were recruited to do something different. I feel like there's some players who will benefit from going somewhere else, just as coaches will benefit from getting new players in. It can be win-win in some scenarios. So there will be a lot of attrition, 10 plus, pretty easily, I think. And you got to regroup in the offseason. The transfer portal and attrition is going to be a big part of that. All right. I do want to say thank you to everybody tuning in. That's our show today. Can continue releasing content as always. You guys are amazing. Guys and gals are amazing. This is the Locked On Badgers show. I am Ryan Herrings on Wisconsin. We'll talk later.